Hi everyone. My name is Javant and I'm representing DSH Hacks. And today I have with me today Siyuan. So Siyuan, you wanna introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Siyuan Feng. Usually, I like to people call me just the C1. Letter C, number one, the easy way to remember my name. Well, I would like to start talking about myself, about my background. So, as you can know, my job title was data analyst, and one of my major role I work in these days was to do the test data protection and in a legal servicing industry. So you're probably wondering how would I get to my initial job and how would my career begin? So let me start with a little bit my background story. There was probably 10 years ago from now, 2017. That's the initial time I entered the US for my undergraduate studies. I initially went to the college in Wisconsin, and back in the days, I was trying to focus on the major in finance and risk management and insurance. And the reason I choose that major is because first, it's a STEM majors. For our foreign student, a STEM major can grant you 3 years OPT times. So that's a major factor. 3 years versus 1 years that give you more opportunity to stay in the US. And besides that, here in the US, what is the most advanced industry in the world? Of course, it's finance and technology, right? So you can choose one, either finance or technologies. So I choose the finance. I thought you go to the finance, you can learn a lot of stuff, you get to learn a lot of new peoples, and that's why I choose my major as finance. And I studied in the Wisconsin medicine, and then I get my bachelor degrees. After I graduate, um, I feels like I would like to learn a little bit more knowledge, not just the basic finance. So I went for a master degree to get a higher education background. So I went to the John Hopkins in the School of the Advanced International Study, the SAS, to get some better knowledge and understanding of the finance and overall economics. So I spent 1 year there to get my master degrees, and then I come to the job market to find my jobs. My initial job was a risk analyst in a bank called the Federal Home Loan Bank. But that experience was not very happy because just our 2 months I get fired and I have to move back to the job market again to find a new job. And that's where I land my current job, which is a data analyst roles in the CSC, the corporate service company. And now these days, I'm working on to protect the test data as well as trying to automate all the existing process using the AI. So something everyone knows about these days, like the large language model, OpenAI or the Gemini's or the cloud. But initially, I was using some more basic language model. So it's called the Spacey. So some very basic uh, natural language processing tool, probably the origin of the ChatGPTs. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that's my little bit background I have here.
Okay. I think that's really interesting. I think how you talked about your life and everything that's happened. I think you went through a lot of stuff. But
Yeah,
just a quick question for those people that don't know, what is OPT time?
OPT, yes. So for our foreign student, they usually give you, so after you graduate from school, if you want to work in the US, you usually have a 1 year permit. So you have to get this 1 year and then you win a which H1B lottery to get your working visa. So it's quite complicated. But basically, it's like if you get 1 year OPT time, then you only get one chance to win the working visa lottery. But if you get the stamp, then you have 3 years time, and which means you get 3 times to win the lottery. So some basic math, 3 times more chance of staying in the US and secure a working visa. That's just how the mathematical way to figure out which one you should choose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think you also talked about, so did you immigrate here from somewhere else? Or and
Yeah,
if
yeah. I
so,
was
like where?
originally from China.
Oh, okay, okay. And this was like for schooling, so you took your college here?
Yeah, yeah. I did my college and my master degree here.
Okay, okay. So I think you talked a little bit about your time moving. So how did you get into college and how do international students like apply to college over here?
Yeah, so for the international student, it's a little bit different because I think one of the challenge we have is some language barriers and to get you have to secure a TOEFL test score in order to apply to school here, and it's quite depend on the school you apply because the more advanced school usually require a higher TOEFL score, but if you just apply some community college, which isn't a bad idea because their tuition fee is pretty low. But if
Mhm.
you apply some those low level education, then they usually does not really require a TOEFL score. You can come to the US first, and then they will have some language teacher just to help you to understand how to using the English to study in the campus. So yeah, so I think the language is one thing you really need to pay attention. Besides that, that's not much I need to pay attention because there are also some schools that require you to get the SAT score, but for our Chinese students, that's not really big a deal. The English is, but the math and other things isn't too challenging for the most of the international students. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really interesting how you came from China and then you had a super cool experience and how you're sharing that with everyone. But
Yeah.
one more thing that was also on your slide. So you wrote that you should have majored in CS instead of finance. Why was that? And is it only because of the OPT time or is it another
Uh,
reason?
Yeah, actually, both finance and computer science, they are both under the STEM degree. The
Mm,
only difference is here in the US, the whole the employment system works is they usually prefer to hire the people that you cannot find within the local US citizens. So a lot of US citizens or other people with citizenship they choose to study finance as well, but people usually do not really, in the past at least, at my time, they don't really like to start computer science because it's a more challenging and more boring course of the work. And so when you walk into the job market, people tend to hire the computer science people first rather than the finance. So finance usually, if they cannot find you because there are much more candidates at least for our foreigners, there are much more U.S. citizen candidates, and they would prefer. And because finance also require a higher background on the communication skill, and which can be a challenge for some of the international students as well, because English is our second language, and we
yeah.
probably cannot speak as well as the U.S. citizens. So
Hmm.
that's why I would prefer to start it on computer science, which they don't require that much of the communication skill, and you just and to be honest, they probably don't even have such high standards in the camera in the school because back in my school, the University of Wisconsin Madison, the finance actually require higher background for you to enter the business school just to start your major. For the computer science, you don't even have that background. You don't have to reach a GPA of 3.8 just to enter the business school and study the finance. The computer science, anyone can start it. So yeah, so that's little tricky things. So it's kind of like you pay the extra effort, but you don't get that much of the returns.
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense in terms of like choosing what major to pick seems like it's a very important choice for
Yeah,
especially international students because they have to get that green card or they have to like get that citizenship through the lottery for
yeah,
the
yeah,
H-1B. So I think
yeah.
that's really important. But also just another question that I had. So if you don't mind me asking, you told us that you got fired from your first job after 2 months. So what did you learn from that experience and how did that help you grow as a person and get you your second job?
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Wow, that's not some honorary experience, but I still have something to say and to learn. So
Mm,
the one thing I learned is my first job was very, very good paid. I mean, that's probably during the COVID time, but it started at $49 per hour, which I
Mhm.
can still match that pay me like 4 years after I graduated. So if I'm looking for a new job right now, I'm not sure if I can get the similar level pay as my first job. So it's a very high pay jobs, and for some new graduate, they love to find the high pay job just like I do. I mean, I never imagine I can get such a high pay job on my first job. So I just try everything I can to get that job. However, I just didn't realize, usually if you get a high pay job, they usually have very high expectation on you as well. So which means they usually mean they are basically assuming you like you will work overtime. You will work even if you are sick. So that's the situation I got. I'm sick, so I was sick because I got COVID, and I said, "Oh, is it okay? I take some rest at home." And my manager just said, "No, you cannot take rest. You need to still work. I will allow you to work remotely at home, but you still need to work." I said, please, I need some rest. And since that goes well, and I got fired.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so if you choose a very high pay job, be sure that you get some preparation. Especially, I was working in a state in the Iowa. There are
Mhm.
some states that tend to protect the worker. There are some states tend to protect the employer. Those Middle West state, they definitely favor more to protect their employers. So in those states, you do not get a lot of protection from those labor laws or something. So they can fire you for any cause, and you should be prepared for that. I said, it's somehow already told you because otherwise it's a very high paid job and it doesn't require a lot of background. Why would you hire a new graduate rather than an expert? Because they just cannot find anyone else who would want to work for these jobs. So yeah, that's one thing. But some more positive things I need to learn lower ahead is also be sure to make sure that if you have a lot of tasks to do at the same time, for example, if your manager said you need to do 10 tasks and all of them need to be done by the end of this week, and you just cannot finish all of them at once. In this situation, be sure that you just focus on one task and make that one task 100% perfect without any mistakes, rather than focus on 10 tasks parallelly and work on them at the same time. That's not give you a good result. So usually the manager, if they say one good result, just one good result, they will be okay. But if they say none of them are in 100% state, even though you pay 200% effort, not all of them is just not 100% perfect, then your manager will start to blame you and think you are not really capable of doing this job. So that's
Yeah.
something you should really keep in mind.
I think that's a good point. Instead of spreading yourself thin, focus on one thing and then
Yeah,
move on from task to task instead of just like splitting up all your eggs in different baskets like they normally say.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So you also talked about in your slideshow I'm looking, and you said that you love to use automation to replace manual work. So in what
yeah.
ways do you do that, and how can someone start doing that now in
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah. That's something I really love to share. So, I have to say the reason at this point I already survived 2 rounds of layoff. Yeah, I'm still not get fired because all my teammates, all my colleagues they all get fired. So I'm the only one who survived in my organization. The reason
yeah.
for that is I know a little bit AI and I know a little bit of the automation stuff. And the manager really liked that idea. Oh, this guy know how to use the AI to replace his colleague. I'm just kidding, but yeah. So how the automation works is quite simple. I think now these days you only need to do or need to learn one sense, which is the OpenAI API. So the API is basically the one that running on the background of your ChatGPT. I think most people know that.
Mhm.
So how you should pay attention these days is instead of trying to learn the basic background of the machine learning, which is a very very complicated study, you just can trying to do some project on your own to say, for example, I don't want to have a phone call with my doctor every time just to check my appointment. Is it possible I can start to developing some application just to replace that function. I can help me to do the phone call or something else. And that I think that is our hackathon about, trying to utilize that AI to do some project, and
Hmm.
rather than to use that traditional tool or to the traditional effort. We are living in a new era. We don't have to use that old AI tool. There are some very complicated old AI tools such as the Spacey I used in the past. Just try to focus on OpenAI, learning how to use that API to do some projects. I think that would be a very easy start for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's cool. I think I'm also looking at another thing at your slide, and you said you really love sports cars. So I think it's interesting that like even though you go to school, you come as an international student, you do all this, you put in all this effort, you still have the time to like look at and have other hobbies. So like, how do you manage like just doing other things in general and just all this work stuff? Because I know you were talking a lot about how even when you were sick, your boss was making you work. So like, how do you get past all that and still have time for these hobbies and just these extra things?
Yes, yes. So I think like if you want to keep a hobby, it's something to support you to stay because um, I have to say right now to just to stay in the US, not to find a improve your career is already a very challenging sense. In order to have your mind to be strong enough to be able to stay in this country, you have to have some hobby, kind of like your pillar that's supporting your mental state. And yeah, for me,
Yeah.
the sports car is not something. Yeah, I've been playing sports car since I went to the college the first day. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite okay because you can drive your sports car to school or to work. It doesn't matter that much. It's not very comfortable ride. There are some hobby that will consume you a lot of time because if you are from yeah, I don't know. There may be some hobbies, but I think there are some hobbies that doesn't cost you that much. But to be honest, this one actually cost me quite a bit. But
Hmm.
it gives you a supporting mental state, and you're always looking forward. For me, I'm just encouraging you. Oh, if I work harder, maybe this year I can get a new Corvette, so something like
Yeah.
that. So that is just something encourage me to work and move forward. So I say you got to have some hobbies in order to encourage yourself. You get a motivation for that.
Yeah, I think that's completely right. Having something that you're looking forward to, or like having a goal which you're trying to do. Like obviously doing all this work throughout your life, it can only like sustain you so much, your mental state. So having something where like you can have some sort of pleasure is really important. And I think
Yeah,
having
yeah.
a sports car hobby is cool. But just on a separate note completely. So for someone that's completely new and for a high schooler in general that doesn't know what to do in the future, how can they get ahead of their peers and maybe even get into a good college and do a good major and then land that first job? Like, what's the method and how do you do that?
Yeah, actually, that's something I want to talk. I think it's very simple, but I will stress anyone these days just to get some at least take some classes in the computer science. It doesn't matter if you want to major in computer science or if you just want to get a minor or you're just taking some classes. You have to at least have some background on the computer science, because now I recall from what I get my second job, the reason I get hired is not because I have some financial background. It doesn't matter if I'm a master degree in the John Hopkins or something. It's because I did learn a little bit classes about the computer. I learned a little bit about the database, the SQL servers, the coding, the Python, the language.
Mm.
You just need to learn a little bit to get your jobs. But if you have completely no knowledge about the computer science, then it will be very challenging to land your first job. Because nowadays everything is about AI and computers. Even maybe
Yeah.
you're studying a history or you study work for a museum, maybe they want some computer science knowledge as well because they want to move their initial their knowledge base into an AI model. I saw some people in the Norway is already working on that. So definitely taking some classes on the computer science, it can never hurt you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So even if you're not majoring in computer science, or if you, even if that's your main interest, AI and like all this coding stuff is going to be integrated into everything. So I think that's a really good insight. Where
Yeah.
just taking even one or two CS classes in like elementary or elementary through K to 12, is just really beneficial.
Yes,
So,
yes, indeed. Yeah, I just took one class, and that one class helped me get my second job.
mhm. Yeah. So another thing that I was wondering is how did you differ? Like, how is it different from the school life in China compared to the US? Because I know you talked about you moving. So how is that school life and just that vibe completely different for international students to get a feel?
Yeah, I have to say school life, maybe not even China, generally speaking, for the Asian, we are teaching in a quite different way. So back in China, um, it's kind of like our factory, everyone was massively produced. It's not, focused on one small individuals.
Hmm.
Um, well, there's cost and benefit for that. And I mean, in the China, they try to get as much as people to get educated rather than to focus on one individual student to be developed by the diversity as possible.
Hmm.
So I'm not really getting used to that China education system. But on the other hand, the Chinese education tuition is very, very cheap. It's nothing near compared to the US. So that's something, you can justify. But, back in the China, they trying to find a most economically beneficial ways to get you the knowledge. Here in
Yeah.
the US, they may cost you 10 times more, but they trying to get you to develop as diversified as possible. You can learn all the fields, you can learn the history, you can learn the political science, you can learn the biology. So they want you to become as diversified and as well educated as possible. So that's two different logic of education, and it's just hard to say which one is good, which one is bad. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my idea.
I think this talk has been like really insightful.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot for coming and just like talking with everyone here and everyone that's watching online. Thanks a lot for this call, and I think everyone would have learned a lot from your experiences, and you're a really funny guy as well. So just thanks in general for this call. I think, yeah, thanks a lot.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be able to attend this meeting with you.
Yeah, thank you.